All right. So thank you all for joining our third finance session. Today's session is going to be on finance planning. And Lori is here with us, so I'll go ahead and let her get started.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. It's afternoon now. So I almost said good morning. So today we're going to be going over financial planning, finance planning, and what's truly involved in that is just being prepared for your monthly bills and some other tactics we're going to go over. So as you all know, we're coming from the CFPB, Your Money, Your Goal Toolkit. So if anyone hasn't had an opportunity to go on the CFPB website to be able to pull the toolkit down, I highly encourage you to be able to do it. The materials that they provide are really self-explanatory. And it's just a helpful tool to be able to use if you can't actually sit down and work with the participants in depth on these things. So the first session that we're going to go over is Module 5. So getting through the month. What does that look like? So most of the time when we sit down with people and we're going over their money, like we talked about last week, everybody has long-term goals that they want to try and reach. But most of the time, most people don't know how they're making it through the month and how they're going through their day-to-day. So one of the things this module presents to you is how to work with a cash flow budget, which basically means how much cash do you need to make it through the month. So what's considered cash? So most people actually only think of their income when they say, oh, well, I only have my income. But if you actually have access to any public assistance such as SNAP or WIC, you can count that because that is something that you need to be able to budget for. Housing vouchers, as well as any debit card access. So I know with some vouchers, they give you like a $200 or something like that cash amount that could be utilized toward bills. So just keeping in mind that those are also considered cash options as well. So when you are going over savings and you're planning for the unexpected, how does a cash flow budget look, right? So a cash flow budget looks like this, as you can see on the screen. You start the beginning balance for each week is actually the ending balance of the previous week. So as you can see here, the ending balance on this example for week 1 was $122.37, and so that became the beginning balance for week 2. So to get a starting balance, you total your cash, debit, and account balances. So right here, as you can see in the beginning, they have the income for their job, they have whatever SNAP benefits they have, and then they have their public housing voucher. And then from there, their total weekly income is $1,272.34. So from there, they subtract any expenses that they'll have for that week. So savings, housing, utilities, groceries, and transportation. And so from there, out of the $1,274.34 they get for that week, they're going to spend $1,149.97. Now, I know that this might seem self-explanatory, but in actuality, there are a lot of people who do not look at their week-to-week, day-to-day, month-to-month. So this is actually a shocker when I sit down with most people, because for the most part, people can tell you how much they spend on utilities and how much they spend on housing. But outside of that, it's hard for them to actually tell you, like, how much do I spend for car insurance? How much do I spend for TV, phone? All they know is that they pay the bills. So this is a good tool to be able to actually understand your cash flow from week to week to make sure that you have enough to survive the month. So, how do you actually develop this cash flow budget? So, first, you actually collect the information. So, you start tracking your resources. Where am I getting my money from? And writing all of that down. And then you start tracking your spending. Because of the type of society that we live in, and everybody is always on the go, go, go. Um, One of the things we tend to do a lot is purchase fast food because it's quick, it's easy. We don't have to stop. We can just keep going, driving wherever we need to, and we don't have to really think about it. But that's one of the things that I find get a lot of people in trouble is spending money on fast food. So being able to track your spending habits and see what you're doing and how you're doing it, and being able to plan around that. So step two is reviewing your goals. So where am I going? How can I get there? So these were part of the modules that we talked about last week, being able to determine SMART goals, realistic goals. And so after you do that, step three is reviewing plans for life events. So the type of events you should plan for, discussing those type of events. So it can be something like, hey, my child has a birthday party coming up, or it can be something such as I need life insurance because I'm expecting one of my parents to pass away. And then the other piece is what I learned from other events. So if you've had a life event happen in your life, so an example for me would be last year, my grandmother passed away. No one had any type of insurance, and it was unexpected when it happened. So everybody had to scramble to pay for her funeral, headstone, and all of this type of stuff. So out of that, we all learned that, hey, we need to make sure everybody in the family has some type of life insurance to be able to cover events like that in the future. It might sound a little morbid, but at the end of the day, it's something we have to plan for. So then step four is developing personal tools. So everybody has a different way to track money. And no one way works for everybody. And some people might have multiple ways. So I know for me, I don't use a calendar tracking. I actually write down everything. So in the beginning of the month, well, before the month starts, I'll sit down and I'll write down every bill that I have that's coming out, and I'll write down all the income sources I'm expecting for that month coming up, and I'll do an overall um, income versus what's going out, just to see if by the end of the month I'll make it, being having extra money left over. And then after I do that, then I load up my bills in an app, and then I start tracking it weekly, because even if the end of the month is showing I'll have money left over, that doesn't necessarily mean week by week I'll have money left over. So I track mine two different ways. So when you're talking with everybody, your participants, you can ask them, well, what works best for you? Is it going to be writing it down weekly? And I'll show you a little tool that can help with that as well. And then step five, after you've developed all of these tools and you are in this process, you revisit your goals to make sure that you're on track. So where am I going again? How can I get there if I've fallen off track? And then, as it says, tracking, number six, tracking your progress, making sure that so throughout the process for me, so as I said, before the month starts, I'm anticipating what's going to come. But throughout the month, when, like, let's say if I expect to get paid on the 15th, and perfect example, I wrote down in my budget I was going to get $600 on the 15th, but when the 15th actually hit, I got 547. So making sure that you're actually accounting for your projected versus actual, and making sure that you're still on target or on track with whatever the reason why you're tracking those income sources, because sometimes they may be higher, sometimes they may be lower. So then this is a part of step 4, setting targets. And we talked about this last week. Looking at your spending and being able to say what can be eliminated, what can be reduced, or what needs to be added, if anything. And then how do I meet these targets? If I'm eliminating something, how do I stop that behavior from happening? If I'm reducing something, then again, how can I stick with the reduction? So normally when I'm working with people, as I said, food is usually the biggest thing. So I have a client right now, one person who spends about $500 a month on food just for her. It's just her, but it's not her spending on herself. She goes out with friends and she spends money and she doesn't necessarily have. So we're reducing it because we can't obviously eliminate food, but we're reducing it to where we're trying to get her to spend $250 a month now, and we're putting what's the word, I can't think of the word, we're putting different um parameters in place to make sure that she can actually stick to this. So if her friends call her and say, hey, let's come out, in the spare of the moment, and she's ran out of her money for that week, then she has to politely figure out a way to say no. So that's as far as setting targets go. And then the next step is record your savings. What did you save? What events helped or what kept you from saving? So again, going back to one of my clients, if we have a savings goal right now of $500 a month. Well, her engine went out in her car and she ended up spending $300 on a rental car. So that's an event that kept her from saving. But documenting why it didn't happen or why it did happen will also help help them see trends that are occurring. Because if they see that every month some freak accident is always happening, then we might have to find different ways to be able to save, to be able to not only cover your regular life, your regular savings, but to also try and account for these freak accidents that are occurring, versus if you put the money in a savings account and then because of reckless spending, 2 weeks later you had to take the money out of a savings account. And then the step 10 is planning for sustainability. So how can I continue to make progress? What helped me the most? So this is kind of something that you reflect back on at the end of the month. So what struggles did I have? What kept me going? So I have some clients that I can give them a budget and say stick to it. And then I have some that need daily encouragement and daily reminders to stay on track and do different things like that. So you always want them to be able to reflect back on whatever behavior they were doing and make sure they're making progress, and then give them tools to just keep making that progress to where they won't have to lean on someone else to be able to help them get through. And so if you are using the toolkit, this is one of the tracking sheets that are in the toolkit that will allow them to write down the sources of income that they receive, what type of outputs, like what type of requirements, payments that they have going out, and they can see what this will look like from week to week. So this is one of those tools. And then the second tool is a cash flow calendar. And this is one of those things that I say you can do if you like writing things down. So as you can see, like on Monday the 17th, that's when their SNAP benefits are going to come. On Saturday, they get paid. So that's their total for that week. But then under that, you have your bills that are going out. So you have on the 17th, you have to go buy food. You also have a phone bill coming out. On Thursday, you have gas. On Saturday, you have a car payment. So just making sure that when you're starting off the week, so like for this person, starting off this week on the Sunday, they need at least um, $90 to make it before to make it to their payday to be able to pay for their phone bill and their gas bill. And then once that payment hits on Saturday, then they'll also have enough money to be able to make their car payment. So being able to see it this way will allow them to be able to say, okay, how much money do I need to get me through the week? And when do I need it? Because yes, I might get paid next week. But again, if you're getting paid on Saturday and you're going to need money prior to Saturday, it's helpful to plan ahead, knowing that from the prior week, I at least need to come into this week with $90 to be able to pay my bills and not have to wait till Saturday and then result in late bills. And then the third tool that they have is a improving cash flow tool. So this will just show increased sources of cash income or other financial resources, including accessing public benefits and applying for tax credits for which you qualify. Decrease your spending or use of cash and other financial resources, which will equal match of timing of resources and use of income where possible. So this is basically just a way to be able to create different strategies on how to improve your cash flow. So like the first one is negotiate new due dates for bills to better line up for when you get your income. So like let's say for the example right here, if this person isn't able to go into the week with $90, at least $60 for the phone bill, then they can try and negotiate to get this changed to where that Saturday, that's when their phone bill is due, to help prevent you lapsing on due dates and preventing things from getting cut off. So those are different strategies that you can use once you map things out. And if you realize, hey, by the time I get paid, I'm still going to need money beforehand. So this is just different things that different ways that you can try and help them figure out what can I change around in my schedule to make it work around the income sources that I have, instead of trying to work around their income to pay their bills. So when you're working with your clients, if you have 10 minutes with them, you can go over the cash flow checklist. If you have at least 30 minutes with them, you can go over the cash flow budgeting and calendar. And if you have multiple sessions, this will allow you to go over the cash flow sustainability and management and be able to do the checkup and see if they are noticing their trends and behaviors. So then module 6 is talking about and managing debts. So what is a debt? A debt is money that you owe, and it can be different from whether it is credit or if it's a person that you owe the money to. And when you are discussing debt with your clients or participants, just making sure that you keep a non-judgmental stance based on whatever type of debt they explain. Some people might not want to reveal their debt. Some people might not see debt the way that you see debt. So just being mindful when you're having those conversations. So what type of debts are there? So you have some good debt, which is long-term investments, low interest rates, credit building, planned debt, borrowing at similar return to wages. So what falls under this category? Normally houses fall under this category, right? Because you plan to buy a house. Cars can, depending on if you actually plan for it, unless you do it on a whim. So those are usually your good debts. A credit card can be considered a good debt depending on if you actually, again, plan on how to utilize it to actually build your credit. So what are bad debts? Unnecessary purchases. So if you have a credit card, so I came across someone who had 21 credit cards. And her credit cards is what she used to be able to purchase things in her life. But the unnecessary purchases piece comes into play because she didn't have the actual money. She wasn't making the money for the items that she was purchasing. So when you have bad debt, you tend to run into higher interest rates. You're just building bad credit, like you're just compounding bad on top of bad. And 9 times out of 10, you are normally borrowing more than what you're actually making. So most people don't really look at credit cards as borrowing, but that's what it is. At the end of the day, it is someone else's money. It's a loan in the form of a credit card. So just making sure that they are aware that there are different types of debt, and there are some that are good, some that are bad, and you want to make sure that you're trying to stay away from the bad as much as possible. So, as I said, remember, debt is extremely personal. Some may not want to discuss debt or may define it differently. So, your debt conversations should involve a collaborative definition of debt, unbiased and respectful communication, and trust building. So, when I'm talking with people to make them feel comfortable, I share a little bit of stories about me, and what experiences that I've had with debt, because I want them to see that it's universal. No one's exempt from it. Everybody goes through it. Everybody uses a credit card too much, takes out a private loan, has student loan debt. Like, everybody goes through the debt process. It's about how you come out of the debt process. So, developing a debt management worksheet. To do this, your first step is writing down a list of the businesses, people, credit lines, or debt owed, including amounts and if there are any timelines. So normally, if you owe people, you're creating that timeline. If those are personal debts, if you owe a business on a credit card, they've established a timeline for when that's due, and making sure that they don't forget to add in the interest rates, because interest rates can actually move your timeline depending on if it's actually included in the breakdown. And making sure that they're keeping their bills all in one place, and they are constantly checking their credit score. And some people, making sure that you are definitely letting people know that checking your credit score does not hurt you yourself. It's a way for you to be able to manage your debt by seeing what's on your credit. Like, say, if you pay off a collections account, you need to be able to go in and see that it has been removed and that it is reflected on your credit report that you've paid something off. So resources like Credit Karma or CreditWise, annualcreditreport.com, you can get a copy of that once a year for free from all 3 credit bureaus. When it comes down to the credit score, I just tell everyone, when they're looking at Credit Karma and CreditWise, don't really pay attention to that score too much, because that score is not the same score a bank would pull. And the only reason they're different is because Credit Karma and CreditWise pulls a 2-year average of what your credit history is versus when banks are pulling your information, they're usually going 5 years out. So that's what makes those scores different, because a lot of people freak out and they're like, oh, my score at the bank was lower. And it's because they pull a larger time frame versus Credit Karma, Credit Wise, they're pulling a shorter time frame. And then also going over with your clients or participants how much debt is too much debt. So on this slide, the only thing that they didn't give was a number to go along with the debt to income ratio. But the debt to income ratio is a good measure of how much your income is obligated, how much of your income is obligated to debt. And what that basically means, I just did a debt to income ratio for someone last night. They pay $700 a month in their total debt, and their monthly income is $3,400. So that made her debt to income ratio 29%, meaning 29% of her income is going to her debt. So when you are working with your participants, that number should be no more than 40%. If you are working with anyone and you calculate that their debt to income ratio is over 40%, then that could be one of the problems that they're having in life, that they are being swallowed by debt. So this is definitely a good measurement so they could see number wise, hey, this is what it looks like for me. This is what I'm doing. And basically the majority of my money is going to debt. So with that being said, talking about credit with them, one of the things we stress when you're going over your credit is if you have collection agencies, because you owe people money, but everyone should know their rights. At the end of the day, the Fair Debt Collection Practice Act protects consumers from harassment. And what does that mean? Repeated phone calls intended to annoy, abuse, or harass, obscene or profane language, threats of violence or harm, publishing lists of people who refuse to pay their debts, calling you without telling you who they are, using false, deceptive, or misleading practices. So these are the debt collection people. These are the people who call you, and when you say hello, they just say, am I speaking to such and such? They don't actually ask you who you're speaking to. They don't say who they are. The only thing that they ask is your information. So those things are actually not supposed to happen, regardless of if you owe the money or not. They are not allowed to harass you under this act. So with that being said, and we're going to go a little bit more in detail about the rights of customers in a second, of clients in a second, but if you have 10 minutes with your clients, being able to go over the debt to income calculations, so showing them how much debt they have versus their income, and if you have 30 minutes, building a debt worksheet, and teaching them how to deal with debt collectors. And if you have multiple sessions, developing a debt reduction worksheet and discussing student loans. Student loans tend to be a big issue right now with most people that I'm coming across, and there are different tactics and different ways, and there are some worksheets in these modules that help you figure out how to navigate the conversation with your participants regarding student loans. So module number 9, which is protecting your money. So one of the biggest things, as I said, we just talked about people being harassed when it comes down to money that they owe. Even though you owe it and it is your obligation, as it says, you do not have to be subjected to being harassed. So one of the resources that are out there on the CFPB's website is a way that you can actually submit a complaint regarding a company that is harassing you or doing different things like that, to where you can actually, so what happens with this service is you'll go on their website, you'll find the company that meets whatever area that you're under, and you'll report to this company what's going on, what they're doing to you, and then they'll reach out to the company to find out if this company is violating that act. So this government entity is put in place to be able to try and mitigate those harassing phone calls that occur. And so protecting yourself and submitting a complaint, most people actually don't do this. They don't utilize this service. They usually either just hang up in their faces and complain about it. But I feel as though, as this slide says, it really gives the consumer power. Like, it really makes you feel as though I don't have to be harassed. I don't have to take this every time my phone rings. I don't have to sit here and be like, oh my gosh, this person is calling me. So you can go into this system. Not only can you make the complaint, you can make the complaint on behalf of someone else if you hear that someone is being harassed. So some people are like, no, I'm not going to worry about it. You can go in and you can actually make the complaint on their behalf. And every complaint that the Bureau receives gives them insights into the different problems that people are experiencing. And that way they can start formulating uniformed actions against these companies. Like, oh yeah, we know that this is a trend that they have, so you don't have to worry about this. So if it's something new that you bring to their attention, that's something that could potentially help other people in the future. So what does this form actually look like? So let's say if you went on there and you wanted to submit a prepaid card complaint. So if you have someone that is continuously harassing you about adding money to your account or managing your account, you can come in here and you can click on it. So one thing that I know people go through with prepaid cards is the automatic fees that come out every month that might not have been disclosed up front if you have so many transactions on it. So if you want to come in here and you want to click on that, then in this box you can describe what happened so they can understand the issue. And then you also have an opportunity to be able to give them what you feel as though your resolution should be. And so after you submit this to them, they'll bring this to the company and they will work on a solution for you. So this is an alternative to the Better Business Bureau. So the Better Business Bureau, you're reporting businesses who have issues, who have failed you pretty much in whatever your expectations were. So this is the financial version of that. So collection agencies, banks, credit card companies, anybody who you're having an issue with and you feel like that they're taking the situation to a whole nother level, you can come to the CFPB website and you can report them. So what happens when you report them? So you submit the complaint, and then after that, the Bureau will forward your complaint and any documents that you provide to the company and work to get a response. If they find that another government agency will be better able to assist, the Bureau will forward your complaint to them and let you know. So after that, the company after your complaint is sent to the company has 15 days to provide a substantive response to you and the Bureau. So basically what that means is they can't come back and say, oh, hey, so this person didn't pay their bill and that's why we're doing this. Like, they actually have to come back with proof and actual documents and information saying that they didn't do whatever it is that you're complaining about. And in some cases, companies have up to 60 days to provide a final response. And that's usually if you're going back and forth with the company. So after that, the Bureau publishes information about your complaint, such as the subject and the date of the complaint, on their public consumer complaint database. And with your consent, they also publish your description of what happened after taking steps to remove personal information. And then the last piece is the Bureau will let you know when the company responds, and you can review that response and give feedback. So this is kind of like the CFPB stands in your place and is kind of like your lawyer. Like, hey, I need you to take care of this, and they make sure that there is some type of um, resolution to your problem. And then the next piece is also explaining to your participants and clients on how to protect their identity. So I actually just had this conversation 2 days ago with a client who wants to start tracking her income, and her solution to tracking her income, I mean not her income, I'm sorry, her solution to tracking her expenses was, I'm going to go to the bank, I'm going to get a box of checks, and I'm just going to write a check for everything. And luckily she called me before she actually made that decision, because I explained to her at the end of the day that is one of the no-nos. On a check, you have your routing number and your account number. That's all someone needs to be able to actually steal your information and take information out of your account. They take money out of your account as well. So making sure that you're not being loose with checkbooks out there. If you have a credit card, using that, making sure you're swiping credit because you can sign versus using your PIN, because there are a lot of tricks that are going on nowadays that allow people to steal your information with the snap of a finger. Same with driver's license number, keeping that protected, making sure that they are that information is secured, as well as your date, city, and state of birth, and social security numbers. I'm not sure if that is still a trend now, but carrying around your social security card, if your purse gets stolen or your wallet gets stolen, that is an easy way for someone to be able to steal your identity. And then I know one thing that I see a trend now that people do is write down their passwords and they keep it in their wallet or their purse. That's no. Keep all of your personal information as far away from you as possible. So if you have to keep it in your car, but keep all of that information separate, so that way you're just not handing over all of your personal information on a platter to someone. And so some additional steps you can do is removing your name from all three credit bureaus mailing list. So all that means is that they won't be able to pre-screen you. So if you actually check your credit report through annualcreditreport.com, and you pull that long, for some people it's 75 pages, for some people it's 200 something pages. But when you pull that report, you'll see a difference between hard inquiries and soft inquiries. So the soft inquiries are pre-screened offers, meaning they don't have the opportunity to fully pull your credit, but they're allowed to do a soft pull where they can see certain information. So you can opt out of people being able to do a soft pull or pre-screen on you. So that's just like the letters you get in the mail that say you have been pre-approved for this credit offer or this loan or that loan. That's how they're doing it. So if you're tired of receiving those, you can opt out, and you can offer this to your participants as well. And as I said down here, being able to go to annualcreditreport.com and pulling your 3 credit reports once a year for free. And so protecting your assets and recognizing red flags, this comes down to checking your bank account, checking your credit card statements, as well as checking your credit report. So one of the things is pressured sales tactics. So you are pressured to purchase things or take out loans you don't want or can't afford. Those are those pre-approved letters that come in the mail. That can also be a tactic that's used at banks. When you walk in there and they are looking at your account and they see in the system that you're pre-approved for certain things. So being able to be weary of that and letting your red flags go up, so that way you are aware and your participants are aware. So the next red flag could be lack of uniformity, which means you call one place and you get some information from one person, you hang up, you call back, somebody tells you something else differently. That's a red flag that they're not on the same page. So being wary of those type of things that happen. If somebody won't put it in writing, if you can't put it in writing, I don't want to work with you. At the end of the day, I don't want to take your word for it. And those things normally happen if you have a collection account and you're trying to pay something off, and and they don't want to send you a letter stating, hey, we agree that if you pay such and such, we'll remove this from your credit. Normally, when they don't want to do that, then you wouldn't make that deal with them. And then if you have credit cards or a bank statement and you notice that you have unexplained fees on it and no one can explain the type of the fees that are happening or why they're there or why they're so high, that's a red flag to kind of close out that relationship and move on somewhere else, because those things should be able to be explained. And then if there are no clear cancellation or return policies. So this usually goes for type products or a service that you purchase, but you don't have the clear notes that say, hey, you can cancel this way, you can return this way. I'm dealing with this with a client right now who unfortunately purchased a subscription, and nowhere in their terms and condition does it say how they can actually cancel and what happens if they cancel. So when you're stuck in situations like that, unfortunately, you're at the whim of that company, and that's a red flag. And that again is a red flag for you to sever that relationship. So additional resources. If you have a consumer complaint, or if they have a consumer complaint, they can go to this website. And so these slides will be available to you all. So they can go to this website if they have a consumer complaint. If they want to visit the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection, that's their website right there. The toolkit also includes links or references to third-party resources or content that consumers may find helpful. And the links in the packet are organized by topics corresponding to the content modules. So every module that we go over, those links will be associated with that module. So next week, we'll be going over understanding credit reports and scores. And so under that, it will say if you would like help managing your debt or rebuilding credit, visit the National Foundation of Credit Counseling. So that's how those additional resources are laid out in the packets. And so next week, we will be mainly focusing on disaster recovery and what that looks like in the community, to your participants, and to your organizations. So does anyone have any questions for me? Or anything that you would like me to elaborate on, go back to? Well,
All right. Well, I guess that concludes today's session. So I will see you all or hear you all tomorrow for our housing presentation. Have a great rainy afternoon and talk tomorrow.